Good day, everyone. My name is Jan Atendido, and I will be presenting my paper entitled Intrapreneurship in SMEs, Its Effect on Company Performance During the COVID-19 Pandemic. Work from home was a dream for many corporate Filipino workers. The convenience of not having to wake up early in the morning to take a shower and to go to the office by crashing the traffic jam that Filipinos are well accustomed to in Metro Manila, it was a luxury that corporate workers could have only dreamed of. And who would have known that the lockdowns brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic made that dream a reality? The work from home setup did not come cheap. Many lives were taken by this health crisis, which has stricken the world beginning March 2020. Truly, the luxury of working from the comforts of our homes was a blessing that came with a burden. Almost 2 years into the COVID-19 pandemic, companies were forced to find new ways to conduct their business activities while the economy fights for healing. And now, entrepreneurship, which is defined as the practice of entrepreneurship within a corporation, can now be reassessed in today's tough environment brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. The term entrepreneurship has been around since 1978. Though it isn't new, it is quite popular as the term was developed and used widely in research. In literature, scholars have used different terms to define entrepreneurial efforts within the organizations. The general question that this study aims to explore is what is the impact of entrepreneurship in terms of innovation, risk propensity, competitive energy, proactiveness, and autonomy on company performance in terms of return on assets, productivity, and growth and improvement of selected SMEs. Furthermore, this study investigates whether the COVID-19 pandemic has allowed corporate workers to practice activities of entrepreneurial spirit, especially during the transition from a face-to-face setup to a work-from-home setup. This allows the preview studies to be tested in an all-new and tough environment that is being experienced worldwide. The conceptual framework of Augusto Felicio et al. 2012 was adopted where the 5 dimensions were used to measure entrepreneurship for financial performance in terms of ROS and ROA, productivity, and growth and improvement. In this study, it was verified that entrepreneurship has positive effects on the measures of growth and improvement, but all the dependent variables were still tested to see if the model differs between 2 different settings. Also, for this study, as shown in the operational framework, it will also be investigating the entrepreneurial activities of the SMEs before and during the pandemic, as shown by Hypothesis 5A, but up to Hypothesis 5E. The research will utilize a quantitative and causal research design. Sloven's formula was used to calculate the sample size. According to the 2020 list of establishments of the Philippine Statistics Authority, we have a total of 102,842 SMEs. Thus, the sample was calculated by using 102,842 as big N, and the margin of error is 0.95%. The total sample size is 398. An online survey was disseminated to the Philippine SME respondents through Google Forms in order to gather the necessary primary data for the study. The survey went through item analysis, reliability, and validity tests to assure the goodness of its measure. Cronbach's alpha was also applied to test its internal consistency. The Cronbach's alpha scores resulted to over 0.8, which means that the internal consistency of the instrument is good. This table shows the results for the linear regression test. As revealed by the adjusted R-squared column, with the correction factor, entrepreneurship cannot be explained by the behavior of ROA, as the results yielded a negative value of 0.38. Also, in the results of the p-value column, it shows that entrepreneurship does not have a significant impact on ROS and ROA, but has a significant impact on productivity and growth and improvement since it yields a value less than 0.05. Thus, the study fails to reject null hypothesis 1 and 2. The study, however, accepts HA3 and HA4. Looking at the individual dimensions of entrepreneurship, it was found that those who take more risks as compared to those who never take risks has a significant difference on productivity during the pandemic as compared to before. This table shows the results of the paired sample t-test. The interpretation of the means follow a scale. The innovation activities of the selected SMEs before the pandemic shows a mean score of 3.04%, which means that on an average, the firms would sometimes adopt new products, processes, or technology. During the pandemic, the firms practiced these innovation activities more often. The firms also took more risks before the pandemic than they did during the pandemic. In terms of competitive energy, there were no differences before and during the pandemic. The companies, on an average, also strongly agrees that they were proactive towards firm growth before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, this went down one level. Finally, for autonomy, companies on an average would often have their employees involved in decision-making, but during the pandemic, this also went down. The p-values also show that among all the entrepreneurial dimensions, only competitive energy does not have a significant difference before and during the pandemic. The conclusions of the study are: number one, entrepreneurship in the dimensions of innovation, risk propensity, competitive energy, proactivity, and autonomy does not have a significant impact on ROS and ROA. However, entrepreneurship has a significant positive effect on productivity and growth and improvement. This was consistent with the results of the study of Augusto Felicio et al. 2012. The difference lies in the results of the variable of productivity. Another interesting finding lies in the individual dimensions of entrepreneurship, also in the results of productivity. Those who take more risks as compared to those who never take risks has a significant difference on productivity during the pandemic as compared to before. And finally, there is a significant difference between innovation, risk propensity, proactivity, and autonomy before and during the pandemic. It was only competitive energy that revealed a non-significant difference between the two time periods. Thus, hypothesis 5A, B, D, and E were accepted. Based on the findings of entrepreneurship on company performance, it is suggested that companies increase their effort in innovation, such as the development of new products or services, new processes, strategies, admin techniques, etc. Taking risks, being proactive, and allowing employees to independently manage and make decisions in some areas of the business can also increase business growth and productivity. There is also evidence to support the recommendation that the selected SMEs should take more risks today than they did before the pandemic began to produce more outputs. Finally, it is recommended that the selected SMEs invest in HR activities that would boost the overall engagement in the organization. As the results show that although there is no significant difference in the competitive energy of the selected SMEs throughout their competitors, the mean score of their responses for that dimension has decreased. This study is not without limitations. There is reason to conduct future studies to find good predictors of ROS and ROA. An in-depth study of a particular industry is also suggested, as it was not a factor in this study. Such researches would be more beneficial to our local SMEs, as the nature of each industry can be considered and recommendations can be made more specific to their business operations or activities. Thank you for your time, and this ends my presentation.